Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I get to ask my dumb questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a captain and a training officer from the Troy Fire Department in Michigan. He has 15 years of combined experience in firefighting and a mechanical engineer. He previously worked in research and development pertaining to electric vehicles. He specializes in fire safety and the challenges of responding to EV incidents. He has served on the technical panel of the fire safety of batteries and electric vehicles for Underwriter Laboratories Fire Service Research Institute. He's collaborated with the Society of Automotive Engineers and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. My guest this week, Mr. Patrick Durham of STASH Training. Patrick, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So as is the way this podcast opens up, we're going to do a little stupid game. I'm going to spin my wheel of stupid questions, and you're going to give me hopefully a really smart answer to a really dumb question. So here we go.
Spin that wheel of stupid questions.
So we really do have a wheel, and I really am going to spin it. And we're going to find out what we get today.
All right.
Do you believe in aliens?
I would say so. I think something else has to be out there.
Have you ever had an alien experience?
No, definitely not. But I'm not sure they've been to Earth, but something else has to be out there. It can't just be us, right?
And in terms of probability, you'd have to guess that that's the case, right?
You'd think so. Universe is pretty vast.
Okay, well, hopefully that's my stupidest question of the day. If I get dumber than that, we really have got off track. But all right, we're going to have you talk about what you know best here, and that's batteries and electric vehicles. So before we kind of dive into the weeds of that, just tell me about your life kind of up to now. What gets you so interested in batteries? How did you get here?
So it really happened by accident. Last 14 years or so, I've been working in the automotive industry for my day job, the fire service. I'm a volunteer on that end. But my day job, I've been working different advanced development projects. And right around 2018, I started working on the battery box structure for electric vehicles. And it was still research-based. And while I was going through that process, I learned a lot about batteries. I learned a lot about how the auto industry is trying to contain them and protect them in the battery box structure. And it just started with a presentation in my station. Yeah, I just wanted to put on a short little presentation. I'm the training officer at the station, so teach the guys about batteries, EVs, and it really snowballed from there quite quickly. So I've been doing the classes since 2021. And just recently went full time, no longer still a mechanical engineer, but no longer with the auto industry.
So for people that maybe don't know this stuff, obviously as good as you or even as good as me, let's just talk a little bit how a lithium ion battery works and what's kind of causing so many problems for so many people right now.
A lot of it is the energy density. You look at how much energy is stored in a battery. For example, an Energizer, a AA battery. We've had these forever. They're 1.5 volts. It's not really a big deal. But when you start looking at a lithium ion battery, this right here, and I'll hold the two together, this one holds almost 9 to 12 times the amount of energy in the lithium ion. And you're jamming so much energy into the battery itself that if there is a failure, that energy has to go somewhere. And the other part of it is just the stability of the construction. And I've got a much bigger battery right here that I've taken apart. It's fairly straightforward on the way they're constructed, but you've got layers of material, anode and cathode material. It's like a book. This little plastic film here, this is what holds all the energy back. When you have a failure in this film, all that energy has to go. There's a big chemical reaction. I kind of look at it like a dam failing. Once the film fails, much like a dam, that water is going somewhere. You've got all that energy stored up. For example, the dam, the water pressure. So that's the way I look at it.
So if that separator is the real piece that's causing our problems by failing, why would we not make that more robust? Is there a reason we can't do that, or is it just for the sake of shrinking these batteries down to the smallest size possible?
Yeah, it really comes down to the chemistry and the way the chemistry works inside the battery. When the battery's working, the electrons are going through the wire back and forth, hopefully in a very controlled manner. But when that's happening, the lithium ions are going back and forth between the anode and cathode inside the battery. It's kind of a little like magic. They're going through that separator material with the help of the electrolyte. One misconception is a lot of people think there's lithium metal inside the lithium ion batteries. The sheet's in here, and let me pull a sheet out. They're very thin. This is just copper and aluminum, and you probably can't really see it with the black and black, but it's a very thin sheet of aluminum right here. They either have graphite coatings or the lithium ion battery coating, and it's an oxide coating for the lithium ion battery chemistry.
So is this just a greater prevalence of use, or what's the reason that all of a sudden in the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years, it seems like this is a big hot button topic in the fire service, in the world of hazmat, just in general? We're just seeing more of them, or what's going on?
Yeah, there's two things. We are seeing more of them, but also the batteries themselves are getting larger. You think about your cell phone. The cell phone's about 12 watt hours, and watt hours is a unit of measure as far as energy storage. When you look at something like your tool battery, you're up in the 50 to 60 watt hours. You get a lawnmower battery or an e-bike battery, you're 500 watt hours. An electric vehicle, you're at 100 kilowatt hours, so 100,000 watt hours. So the scale is just increasing with every device.
So as these devices increase in scale, these batteries increase in scale, is it a non-linear path towards volatility? The larger you get, is it always going to be more volatile, or is that not quite the case?
Well, you're storing energy. So the more energy you store, the more potential you have for that energy to be released. And when it does get released out of a battery, especially, it's fairly violent reaction.
Yeah. Okay, so as we start thinking through, we have a little bit of understanding of what this battery is. If we start to look through the emergency response perspective, what do we know confidently about this response to lithium-ion batteries and EV vehicles, and what are we still trying to figure out?
Well, the biggest thing is when an individual cell fails, you're not stopping that failure. What you can stop is that cascading failure from cell to cell to cell. And that's in a perfect world. That's if you have access to the battery pack itself, or depending on the size. A lot of the problems we're having with electric vehicles, the battery cells are located in this watertight, fire-resistant box underneath the vehicle. So it's very difficult to get any type of water or any type of cooling effect on the cells themselves. Sure, we can squirt water on the outside, but it's not really doing anything at that point in time. That's like having a bedroom fire on a house and then just putting a master stream on the roof and trying to put it out. You got to get in there to put it out. So it's where a lot of the challenges are.
Coming from the vehicle industry, is this the thing that they're trying to tackle, that exact problem? I would imagine so, right? Like, we want to be able to protect these batteries, but we also want to be able to give some sort of fire suppression access to that compartment. Is that a thing that they're working through?
I'm not really seeing it too much. Unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of the engineers I've talked to that will make statements flat out: our vehicles don't catch on fire, or our batteries don't spontaneously combust. And unfortunately, that's, to a certain degree, that's not what we're seeing. Now, electric vehicles, we're not seeing a huge issue with electric vehicle fires. At least I don't believe we're seeing a ton of them. We don't have the data to really back it up at the moment. But it's just one of those things that I'm not seeing a lot of work on that end. A few things I am seeing, for example, like Tesla, they're designing the bottom of their battery box to melt out. It's aluminum now, so the battery cells will drop out on the roadway, making it a little bit easier to extinguish. Another thing I'm seeing Tesla that's doing, they're doing a really good job on, is they're building their battery packs in a way where if a single cell fails, it directs the failure away from the other cells. Very difficult to see on here probably, but the cell itself, it has little vents on it. And those vents, and I probably can't get it in focus, those little vents allow you to direct that failure, at least into for the Tesla vehicles, into a small channel to vent the battery cell away from the other cells.
How much of a gradient are we seeing between maybe the best constructed batteries that are least volatile and the most, or the worst constructed batteries that are most volatile? Is it like, especially if we talk automotive industry, is this a massive gap? I know there's not a lot of regulation about like safety standards and stuff in EV right now. Are we seeing like this vehicle is super dangerous, this vehicle is very safe, and a huge gradient between the two?
From what I've seen a lot. I've seen the inside of a lot of different battery boxes. I think certain vehicles are definitely worse than others. It's the problem for us in the fire service is we don't know what's inside that battery box. It's very difficult to know unless you've had time researching them, see them tore apart. You know which manufacturer is going with which style of cell, design strategy. So there's a lot that goes into it.
So what do you think as members of the fire service we're doing well right now when it comes to EV, and what are we doing maybe not as good as we could be?
Right now we're starting to do a better job getting the message out about EVs and the hazards around them, and we're doing a fairly good job getting the information out on why the fires are so difficult to manage. And realistically, the let it burn philosophy is getting out there. And while on one hand, it doesn't sound like a great idea, it's really the best tactic for these vehicles right now, depending on the situation, where the vehicle's located, and, everything around that. One of the areas that I struggle with that's really frustrating to me is all the products that are coming out to solve the issue of EV fires. I think there are some products out there that have some merit, and they might help in certain cases, but it's all dependent on the vehicle's construction. There are other products out there that I'd absolutely not recommend, and I don't think would help at all on an EV fire.
How does someone be discerning about that? How does someone, like, say you're a purchaser for your department, you're someone that's going to be making these decisions. What's a way that a person could be discerning when looking at products to, get good information when everyone says that their product's the best?
It's really challenging right now. And one of the things that I look for, because I've had a lot of people approach me on that side. First thing I ask for is, what do you have as far as third-party testing? Do you have any lab reports that show exactly what this product does? And most of the time, either I get a sales pitch or I get some data that doesn't really jive with like a real scientific method.
Yeah, it seems increasingly difficult because, I've been a part of some EV burns and tests and stuff, and everyone seems to think they have the issue, and then it knocked, and then everything seems to kind of work. I've never seen a product that was like lights out. Wow, this has really solved this problem for us. So, definitely a thing to be discerning about when you're doing it, so you don't end up committing a huge portion of your budget to some of these tools, despite, not real results, being able to back it up. All right, so I want to hit you with some things. We're going to do battery myth busters. I'm just going to hit you with a sentence. You tell me myth or true, and then give me a little explanation of why that's the case. You good with that?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. It's impossible to extinguish a lithium-ion battery fire.
I'm going to go in between on that one. So as far as a individual cell, I'd say true. It's impossible to extinguish this cell when it goes in a thermal runaway. Depending on the way the battery pack is constructed, you would be able to stop the cascading thermal runaway effect from cell to cell to cell. But you've got to remember, if you do that, now you've got thermally damaged cells. You've got maybe high voltage or other wiring that's damaged in there, and you've got a lot of stranded energy. So you've got a potential for some type of reignition.
Okay. How about this one? All batteries are created equal.
False. There's lots of different.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of different battery chemistries out there. And even when you look at the voltages around these battery cells and battery chemistries, you're somewhere between 3 to 4 volts. Every chemistry is a little bit different. They all have a little different characteristics.
This one is specifically for my wife because we had an argument about this. And if she hears it from you, I think she'll believe it more than when she hears it from me. Storing batteries in the garage during the winter is okay.
I would say it's okay. You're going to have reduced performance potentially. Well, it depends on where you live. In the colder climates, you could have some reduced performance.
Okay.
Especially with lithium-ion battery. They like to be at this nice, comfortable, 70 degrees.
Yeah. So I live in Minnesota, and it's definitely not 70 degrees in January. So me and my wife had the discussion about whether or not it was okay to leave them in the garage or not. So we'll see. All right. How about? Yeah. No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, overall, it shouldn't hurt them. There are some issues, especially with older chemistries, charging them at colder temperatures.
So I know that we're worried about batteries getting warm. How do we feel about batteries getting cold? Is it just a performance issue, or do we also have some sort of increased risk of, a runaway event or something?
No real risk of a runaway event. Like I was mentioning before, some of the older chemistries, if you charge them at colder temperatures and they don't have like a thermal management system to heat them up, you have the potential to grow little crystals on the anode and cathode, anode or cathode. I don't know which for certain, but those crystals are called dendrites. They could puncture the separator film, causing thermal runaway eventually.
Interesting. Okay. You kind of touched on this next one a little bit, and I'll have you expand on it just a bit. All EV fires should be allowed to burn because water just makes more of a mess.
Yeah, I would prefer to see that be a true. Of course, every situation's different. You have a vehicle in a garage, you can't just let it burn in there. If you've got something in a parking garage or next to an exposure, there's going to be issues there where ideally you could pull it away from the exposure or get it outside of the exposure and allow it to burn at that point. But even with that, you have the challenge of this EV is sitting next to an elementary school playground burning. What do you do there? Can you just let the smoke blow across the playground? So ultimately, if you let it burn, it should burn itself out in 45 minutes, an hour, somewhere in that time frame, where we see these departments put water on it, 30, 40, 60,000 gallons of water. They're spending a lot of time on scene, 4, 6, 8 hours. And at that point, you got to ask, is the water really doing anything, or are you just flowing water to flow water?
Yeah, that's been an argument that I've heard, which is like, well, the public doesn't want us to just sit and watch this thing burn. They don't understand that we're doing the right thing. What do you kind of say to that? Is that just a point where we have to be more informed to do the right thing despite public perception, or what do you think?
Well, we're kind of screwed, and we've got two sides of this. We stand around, we watch this thing burn. The public drives by, and they're asking, why aren't we doing our job? But on the other hand, they go to work in the morning. We're fighting this EV fire. They're at work all day, and they drive home in the evening, and we're still fighting the same EV fire. What the heck is this fire department doing, right? They don't know how to put out a vehicle fire. So it's having that PIO ready to go with some type of message about why we're letting it burn is pretty important.
Yeah. That's a good point. That's pretty funny. I never thought about it on the flip side of the coin. If we try and it takes forever, that's pretty funny. Okay. If one cell ignites, the whole pack or module is doomed.
The whole pack or module is absolutely doomed. Like you're never getting it back. It's total at that point. But with that said, it doesn't mean the whole battery pack module is going to burst into flames. A lot of that has to do with the module or pack design.
Of the module and pack designs, we didn't really get into this, being prismatic or, pouch or whatever. Are there certain types that are more and less volatile in your experience?
I don't know about volatile, but as far as like the chemistry or the risk of it actually catching on fire. But I think as far as trying to control thermal runaway, the cylindrical cells have a big advantage because you can direct that failure in a predictable manner. When you look at a pouch style cell, those modules are all squeezed together and they're all touching each other. So if you have one one battery cell fail in that module, you can't predict where that failure is going to go, and it's likely going to rip through that entire module.
Okay, here's a controversial one, I think. Foam should never be used on an EV fire.
I would say that's true. I don't see a reason to use foam. Foam is really meant to smother a fire, right? So these batteries, when they go into thermal runaway, it's a self-oxidizing reaction. They create their own oxygen. It's an exothermic chemical reaction. They create their own heat. So the only real option we have, it isn't to, like I said before, it's not to extinguish the individual cell that's in thermal runaway. It's to cool the cells around them to ensure that those cells don't go into thermal runaway.
So we've covered a lot of questions here about these energy systems, and kind of brings me to the big question. Is all of this new risk worth it, or should we just go back to the days of burning dinosaur bones?
Yeah, unfortunately, is it worth it? I think the technology is definitely improving. You look at Tesla, and they've been really building electric vehicles since 2008. You look at a lot of the traditional OEMs like Ford, GM, Stellantis, they're pretty new into this market. So Tesla, they had some growing pains early on. So the rest of the industry needs to catch up and really understand how to design these in a safer manner. I don't think EVs are going away. I think you're going to see certain areas of the country that will have a lot of them, like where I'm at around Detroit. You're going to have a lot of electric vehicles. You get up into northern Michigan, it just depends on lifestyle, because a lot of places in northern Michigan, you got to drive 45 minutes to get to a store. So an EV might not really make sense. Colder climates, I don't know that EVs really make sense, at least my experience driving them. So I don't know. It really depends on your lifestyle and what you're doing.
So with that, what does the future look like for battery technology? You kind of touched on things needing to improve, but what does that look like? Do you think that there's some of these challenges we're dealing with that can be engineered out? Or is this a thing that we're going to have to deal with as just a volatility of the medium?
Yeah, right now, at least what I'm seeing with the battery chemistries, the existing battery chemistries and the ones that I've seen in the future, I don't see any safe chemistry out there right now. I think it's just something we're going to have to deal with, and we're going to be dealing with it for a while. Even if they came up with a safe chemistry tomorrow and started using it tomorrow, we've got so many legacy products and vehicles out there that it's going to take time. We're going to be dealing with this for a long time.
Okay, as we kind of wrap up here, I just want to thank you for your knowledge and kind of taking your time to speak with me. We could probably do, 10 more episodes on lithium-ion batteries. But I hope I have the opportunity to do some more with you and kind of dig deep on some of these topics. But for now, let the people know where they can find you. Let the people know where you might be training or something like that, because we definitely have a lot of information to offer them.
Yeah, I'm bouncing all over the country doing training. So if you want me to come to your department or your area, you can reach out at www.stashtraining.com, or you can find me on YouTube. I do a lot of stuff on YouTube. Just search for Stash Training on YouTube. I do a lot of incident analysis and talking about different failures that have occurred across the world.
Awesome. Yeah. And I've been gearing up to this interview. I've been watching a bunch of stuff, and man, the content is awesome. It's super good. So I really appreciate what you're doing. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to talk today.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yep.